All right, I know I told you 5 minutes ago, but a couple more minutes, just waiting for another school. Well, actually, like 5. Really quick, if any of you guys wanted to do the cinematography workshop, I know some of you guys didn't select workshops in advance. There's still 40 seats left in cinematography, so it's up to you if you want to stay here with wonderful Sandy or go down to cinematography, which is down at the end of the hall. There's a lot of seats open there, too. So it's totally up to you guys where you want to be, but hopefully a couple more minutes, we will get going.
This presentation will be about nonfiction filmmaking, whether a short film or a documentary. Okay?
Yeah, just so Sandy is a documentary producer. She works mostly nonfiction. So if your interest is mostly fictional, cinematography might be a better option for you. She's going to talk about everything, but that's kind of her focus. So just so you guys know. All right, a couple more minutes, guys. Thank you.
Oh. Am I supposed to just start, or is somebody?
Yeah, your mic is on. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad you all got here. Welcome to Jackson Liberty. My name is Sandy Levine, and I'm very grateful to Jackson Liberty for asking me to come and speak with you today. So I want you to know that I'm going to be speaking about nonfiction, mostly television production and independent production, both short films and long films. And it's going to be a little bit about a lot of different topics, kind of a soup to nuts of producing one-man band. So I hope that's stuff that you'll all be interested in. And I want to tell you that I went to Rutgers University. Can you guys all see the slides okay? Okay. I went to Rutgers University, and the reason, I'm only going to talk for just a second about my background, and then we'll get right into the nuts and bolts of producing. The reason I bring this up is because I was very passionate about photography when I was in college, and I thought I was going to be a photographer. But at that time, we used these very, very smelly, harsh chemicals to develop the film. And I didn't like the way the chemicals made me feel when you were down in the dark room over these big vats of these poisonous chemicals. And then I found a video camera, and I could create images without having to do the developing in the dark room with the chemicals. And that is how I was led into the video production world. I also want to say about my experience at Rutgers, which is a fabulous university. Perhaps some of you will end up going there. You know, at this point in your high school career, way more than I knew when I got out of college. And that's thanks to the fact that the television programs in high schools and in middle schools have advanced so far, and you do so much, and you're going to be graduating from high school with a much greater knowledge of television and video production and filmmaking than anybody had graduating from college when I went. And I also want to mention that I was asked to judge some of the entries into this film challenge, and I want to congratulate everybody in the room for the work that you put into the films that you made. I saw some really great creativity. I saw some camera moves that I actually couldn't figure out how they did them. I saw some good editing, some good acting, and as somebody who's done this for so many years, I know how much work goes into producing a video, even if it's only 3 minutes long. So give yourselves a round of applause for the work you put in. Great job. Again, I'm just going to spend a quick second on this. After I got out of college, I went to a place called Channel 8, which is a cable television station in Toms River. And I announced, I was a college graduate, and I said, I'd love to get a job here working in news. And they said, I told them about what I had done and what I had studied. And the person that was interviewing me said, we'd like to offer you a job. I said, great. How much does it pay? And he said, minimum wage. And I said, no. I am a college graduate. I will not work for minimum wage, which at the time was probably around $2. And I left, and I did other things for 2 or 3 years, but I had the bug in me about wanting to create videos and films that wouldn't let me go. So a couple years later, I came back to that very same television station and talked to the very same manager, and I got offered a job again for minimum wage, and this time I took it. And it was the best thing I ever did. And I say this not because I want you to have to work for minimum wage once you have your college degree, But this is an industry where often you're expected to pay your dues, where you're expected to get some experience under your belt before you're going to be paid well. So if that happens to you when you're going to get your first jobs, I'm sorry, it may be that way for you, it was for me. And here I am at Channel 8 learning how to shoot a camera. And these were big studio cameras. And the cameras that we had that went out in the field at the time, I don't know, they were $50,000 or $60,000 cameras. And so it was very, very, you needed a lot of training to be able to use the gear, and it was just considered elite, really, to have a job in TV production at that time, because it wasn't ubiquitous like it is now, where everybody has a camera, everybody has a phone. And from Channel 8, I went on to a station called NJN, which is PBS, public television, and it was a good move for me because I went from a place where the news program where I worked at Channel 8, it was only seen in Ocean County. But when I went on to NJN, the show was seen all over the whole state of New Jersey and parts of New York, in New York City, and the 5 surrounding states. The state surrounding New Jersey was seen in parts of all the states. So that was a big move up in terms of the professionalism of the productions and also the size of the audience. And I worked for NJN for 23 years, 9 years doing news production exclusively as a reporter and a producer. And I also learned a tremendous amount doing that helped me throughout my entire career. And I also did documentary productions. Hang on a sec. I am very passionate about animals. My father was a veterinarian. My brother is a veterinarian. So I got involved with a show called Homeless Tales. And it was a show about adopting pets that were in shelters. So a dog and cat would come on the show, and viewers would see them, and they would go to the shelters and adopt them. This was before Pet Finder. This was before every newspaper in the world was featuring adoptable pets. And to show you the power of the media, when we first started doing the show, if we featured a dog or a cat, the shelter got flooded with phone calls. They always got home. So that was fun. And I also did, again, I did news for all the time I was there, and I did some documentary production, and sort of my claim to fame, if I have one, in the world of video and television production and exciting shoots that I went on, it was this one. I went to South Australia, and I went diving with great white sharks. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that in a little while. And right now, in addition to doing all kinds of video projects, both independent projects and for television, I just launched my podcast the beginning of this month. It's called Still Time for Joy, and it's about practical advice for weathering life's storms and inspirational stories of resilience. So I just started that May 7th, and this is only May 16th, right, or 17th, May 17th. And my God, I thought it was going to be like not too bad, like not that much work. It's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. I just love interviewing people, and so I thought this would be a good way for me to get to interview people. Again, I thought it was going to be super easy. It's not, but it's also something you all can definitely learn how to do if you want to. And again, this is not a career development workshop, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I do want you to think a little bit about what your own interests are. Because in my opinion, I don't think this is easy work. I don't know. It's fun sometimes. It's fun often. But I also think it takes a whole lot of effort and time to make good videos, good films. And I think it really helps if you sort of think about what types of film projects you like to work on, because it helps if you love the subject matter when things get hard to keep you going. So just a couple of things that you may be interested in. There are also many, many that are not up here that some of you are probably interested in that are not on the list. This is not an extensive list. But one thing is news. I know in probably all of the high schools, or at least most of them, you're probably doing some news stories and news anchoring and news production. Certainly the landscape of television news has changed a lot, but it's still on the air. It's still something people tune into, and there are still jobs in the area of television news. Feature stories, that can mean a lot of different things. This is my area of passion. This is my cup of tea. And I did lots and lots of feature story production when I worked at the PBS station and at Channel 8, meaning human interest stories, biographies about people. Any feature story to me can mean a lot of things that isn't really hard news. So if feature stories are your thing, you should talk to me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to help you. Marketing videos. This is one of the ways that I make money in my business now. And every single business out there, pretty much, let me dial that back a little. Many, many, many businesses are using videos to help them market what they do. Whether they're little 15-second videos or whether they're 5-minute videos that explain what the business does, why they do it, why they're good at it, why customers should choose them. Marketing videos are really important for businesses. And if you know the basics of doing a good news story or a good feature story, you can change it up just a little bit and do really good marketing videos. I just recently did a marketing video for a financial advisor, and it was a lot of work, but he told me yesterday that he's getting 2 new clients. He has meetings with 2 new clients because of the videos. Now, assuming that those clients sign on with him, those deals, those new clients will be worth tens of thousands of dollars for him. So if you can find the right business, marketing videos is a good way to make money down the road. Educational videos, this is a very broad topic, whether it's history, is anybody in the room is interested in history or science? There are unlimited numbers of educational type videos you can do. Culture, and I was talking to a few of you earlier about what you're most interested in, and a number of people said they were interested in doing music videos. That would come under culture, the arts, dance, painting. There are lots of TV shows out there and shows online and art galleries. They're all using videos about culture. So if this is your thing, there are opportunities. Sports, that needs no explanation. Whether you're working on live sports production or you're doing player profiles, always opportunities for people interested in sports. And what else? I don't know whether anyone is brave enough in the room to raise their hand or just shout out. What else is anybody interested in? Can anybody tell me something I don't have on my list? Yes? Music? Okay, music could come under culture, but I know a lot of you are really interested in music videos, and that's awesome. Just for fun, and also because certainly artists are always hiring people to produce films for them about their videos, for their albums, certainly. That's a great idea. Anybody else have one thing they want to mention? Yes?
Social media marketing, TikTok, Instagram.
Excellent. That's a huge opportunity. And, you know, unlimited opportunity right there. Unlimited opportunity, of course. Yes? Reviews. Interesting. Yes, and they can live online. They can also help drive customers to businesses. And again, and I want to emphasize, I'm talking a lot about, you know, after you perhaps go to college, some of you will go to college, some of you won't, but I'm talking a lot about job opportunities. I know that's a little bit down the road, but I'm only asking you to think a little bit about where your interests lie as you move forward with deciding what you're going to focus on. Okay. And thank you for answering my question. It's always fun when people are willing to participate. I appreciate it. Okay, here's what I'm going to cover today, and I will try to be engaging and not boring in these topics. I have 4 P's for success: passion, preparation, professionalism, and perseverance. These are all important, and I could talk about each one of these in many, many, many different areas, but I'm only going to focus on one particular area in each. So passion, the first, and I'm going on and on about this, story selection, passion, find your interest, because to me, this is the most important thing I can say to you today. Try to get yourself into doing productions about something you actually care about and that you love and that has meaning for you and that you're interested in, any of the above. And the reason I think that's so important is because this is not easy work. And you get to those days where you've spent 6 hours shooting something, and when you get back, there's something wrong with the video, or there's something wrong with the audio. Has this ever happened to anyone in the room? Yes, it has. It's frustrating, and if you don't kind of have a real interest in the subject matter, you may want to quit. But if you're really passionate about the subject matter, you might find a way to keep going. Okay, so let's dive a little bit into story selection. I'm just going to pick a couple things that I'm passionate about. I'm very passionate about stories that do good. I'm passionate about stories that tell a story and maybe just, if I'm really lucky, inspire one person, 2 people, 10 people, 1,000 people to help the world be a little bit of a better place. And that may sound corny to some people, but there is the possibility in creating really high quality media to move people to action in positive ways. That's really what I'm passionate about. So my sister happens to be an artist. She's a very well-known artist in Arizona, and she got this opportunity, believe it or not, to go to Africa and photograph wild animals on a safari and then come back to home in Arizona and paint those wild animals and then hold an art show where those paintings were sold, and then all the money from the sale of the paintings was going to be donated to charity. I heard about this plan, and I said, this is what I say to almost everything I hear, oh, that would make a great video. That would make a great video. Story selection, again, is what we're talking about here. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't meet someone or see something or learn something new and think, that would make a great story. That would make a great video. Story ideas are all around you. They can be right in your own family or your own community, or they can be in Africa. So I said, that would make a great story. And the next thing I knew, someone offered to pay for me to travel to South Africa and to go on a safari if I would just create a video about it. Well, what would you say? Yes, I was like, okay, I'm ready. When can I leave? And I got the opportunity to go on safari in South Africa. So this is another thing I want to bring up today is honing your skills in video production and filmmaking. When I say video production, filmmaking, I'm using them interchangeably. So let's just get that out there. If you hone your skills in the production of videos, especially we're talking one-man band, it can take you on amazing opportunities. Again, whether it's in New Jersey or whether it's on the other side of the world. I got to go to South Africa and go on safari. And here's the kind of stuff that I got to see. Gigantic elephants, and our little safari truck one day got in the middle of like a herd of elephants. It was actually rather scary. Lions, okay? Close up to lions. What an opportunity. Rhinoceros. These are actually pretty dangerous. These are the ones you want to not get too close to. So that was just a wonderful opportunity. It was a thrill, and I made a video about it. And my sister's art show raised $80,000 for charity. Every single penny of the paintings that were sold went directly to charity. So it was a great event and just so much fun for me. So, but you don't have to travel to Africa to find really compelling, really engaging stories. This happens to be my husband. His name is Michael. And unfortunately, 25 years ago, he came down with a rare neurological illness. Just for sake of ease, I'll explain it as a brain injury, which it was. And he had devastating effects from it. He was paralyzed for a short time. He had lots of problems, like this similarly to if you've had a severe stroke. Some of you may know someone who's had a severe stroke. He was absolutely devastated. He didn't work for 8 years. Bad time. Some of you may think this is weird, but hopefully we have a common feeling about video, and you won't think it's too weird. I was in the hospital with him, and they thought he might die for about 11 or 12 days. And I think it was on the 12th day, they said, Mrs. Fairhurst, which my name is Levine, but they called me his name. And they said, your husband's going to survive. And I said, thank God. Oh my God, thank God. And what is the next thing I said? Someone get me my video camera. How many people think that's not weird? Please support me here. Okay, good, not weird. No, there were real reasons why I wanted to do that, why I had that reaction. The first is, can you guys see all right? Am I blocking you? Are you okay? All right. The first reason I wanted my video camera was I knew my husband wouldn't remember what happened to him. And I knew he'd want to know later. So I thought, okay, I'm going to tape some of this so he can see later what happened to him. The second reason was I was in the hospital day and night for 2 months, and a lot of times I was just sitting around, so it gave me something to do. And I was, it was very upsetting. I'm not making light of this. It was a horrific time. But the third reason I wanted to start shooting was because I thought, I know my husband's going to survive. I know this is going to be a long recovery, but I think that if I shoot it and I make a story out of it, someday maybe it could help other people. And so I did a story about my husband's recovery. I shot on and off, not all the time, I shot on and off for 10 years because it really took that long until he was in pretty good shape again. And I asked him many, 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 many times if he was okay with me doing it, and he was. And I put together a story, and it's on YouTube, and it has 26,000 views, I think. And the reason it's important to me, I knew I was the right thing to do the story because of the comments on YouTube, because there are lots of people who watch it who have had a loved one who's had a brain injury, and they say, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for explaining what this is like. I'm able to take your video and show it to my loved ones or my friends or my family and explain to them what it's been like to go through this. So video can do a lot of good, and this is one of the instances. This is my favorite story of all time, The Smart Goose. How can you make a good story out of a goose? Well, I'm going to tell you very briefly about the story of the smart goose, and then I'm going to show you the video. It's only about 4 minutes long, and it's my absolute favorite story I've ever done of all time. And it's as close as I've ever come to having a true viral video, which to many people means, 75 million views. For me, I'm happy. It has about 580,000 views on YouTube. It's good enough for me, lots of likes. And but the bottom line is it's just a very heartwarming story. And it involved my dad, who has since passed away. But as I said, he was a veterinarian. And he called me one day and said, knowing that I like to videotape everything, Sandy, you have to come over to my yard. You won't believe what you see. And I want to prepare you because there's some very disturbing video in here, but I'm going to let you know ahead of time that everything turns out to be okay. So don't get too upset at the video. But he called me over to his yard and he said, there's a goose in my yard that's been shot by a bow and arrow, and the arrow is still in the goose. And we want to try to help this bird, but I think you probably want to come over and shoot some video of it while we're trying to help it. And I said, I'll be right there. So my dad, being a veterinarian, this is an x-ray that shows the arrow in the goose. Go one more, please. And here he is working on removing that arrow. This video not only was shown on NJN Public Television, which is the TV station I work for that's seen in New Jersey and 5 surrounding states, but also the Associated Press picked up on the story. They heard about the story. And part of the reason this story got such play was because I called it The Smart Goose. and the Associated Press put out a story on it that was seen around the world. So this is my very favorite story involving my dad, and at this point I'd like to present the smart goose.
Well, have we got a wild goose story for you tonight. It features a Canada goose, a species often disparaged over its great numbers and messy droppings that seemingly arranged for its own medical care after being shot by a bow and arrow. Sandy Levine reports on an incredible journey where Sandy's own dad played a key role in the fate of a fine feathered friend.
It all started in February when people living along Kettle Creek in Ocean County began spotting this Canada goose that was suffering from an illegal bow and arrow shot to the chest. Frantic calls for help began pouring in to local animal shelters.
The citizens were very concerned that the goose was obviously hurt and probably in distress.
For several weeks, animal control officers were frustrated during their repeated attempts to catch the goose with small nets, because even with 2 feet of the arrow shaft sticking straight out of his chest, remarkably, the injured bird could still fly.
One of the other things, and it was heartbreaking, he kept trying to get it out, kept trying to pull it out, and I can't imagine the pain that he must have felt for how long it was in there, too.
A couple of weeks after the goose was first spotted, he made a very smart decision. He landed here on this waterfront property in Toms River. My father, Dr. Bernard Levine, lives here, who just happens to be a veterinarian who was willing to try to help the smart goose.
He came up to our lawn, had no insurance. He's a freeloader, but smart.
To catch the elusive goose, State Fish and Wildlife technician Kim Tinnis brought a special net gun to my father's yard, where the goose was waiting patiently for help to arrive.
I had a misfire, and then I missed the bird, and fortunately, I was able to take a second shot. And the second one went off flawlessly. We captured the bird. We were able to cut the shaft down to a workable number. And then turn it over to a veterinarian.
Very good.
There you go.
The next stop, Toms River Animal Hospital, founded by my father in the 1950s, where the bird was anesthetized and x-rayed, revealing a razor-sharp broadhead arrow not allowed for hunting geese. And this very tough bird also had been shot 3 times with a pellet rifle. A small incision was made.
Boy, that's one hell of an arrow.
And the arrow was pulled out.
It was amazing. It's amazing to see the damage that the arrow had done, where it had penetrated through the skin. There was a lot of necrotic tissue.
For the best chance of a full recovery, the goose was sent to the Raptor Trust in Millington, one of the top wild bird rehabilitation centers in the country. Here, in the company of beloved birds of prey, a much maligned goose received medical treatment fit for a king.
We believe that everything has a significance, whether there are a lot of them or there are a few of them. The individual matters.
Finally, after 6 weeks of healing, it was time for the bird's release back to the wild again.
Whenever you're ready, here we go. Very good.
It's a poignant moment for an avian expert and a doctor who have devoted their lives to helping animals, using their talents and resources to end suffering, even among the less popular, like the smart goose with the incredible will to survive.
It's a good feeling, especially one that injured as bad as this was. It's touch and go.
It's very rewarding. Nice to see him out there frolicking in the water, preening himself, and is enjoying life the way a goose should, back in the wild.
Sandy Levine, NJN News, Millington.
We told you it would be wild.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So the title of this presentation today is One Man Band, and I want to circle back to that because my role in producing this story was first figuring out that there was a story, which I knew as soon as I went to my dad's yard. I mean, I knew we had to help that bird, and I knew that it was going to make a great video. But why, I'm going to ask a question again. I hope one person will be brave enough to throw something out. What do you think about the story makes it compelling and interesting? And I think you have a white hat on. It's hard to see. Well, somebody with their hand right there. I can't really see that far. Go ahead. Can somebody repeat what he said? I can't hear. Because the goose survived? Yes, and they got help? Sure. And part of what also makes it interesting is the variety of shoots. Now think about it. We're talking one-man band now. First I hear about the story, so I go to my dad's yard and I get the goose with the arrow. Then I go back to my dad's yard to try to see that person catch it with a net gun. Then I went to the hospital to see the surgery done. Then I went up to the Raptor Trust, which is a 2-hour drive from my house, to see the bird getting rehab at the Raptor Trust. Then I went up another time to the Raptor Trust to see the bird be released. And there were probably a couple other shoots in there that I'm forgetting about. So my passion for good storytelling, good feature storytelling, means trying to get whatever footage, whatever photos, whatever material you need to tell the story well. And oftentimes that means multiple shoots. Sometimes we don't have that luxury. Sometimes we're working on a project that you have 2 hours to shoot and it has to be done the same day. But for a feature story like this, where you can show progression over time, you can show a problem, people are working to solve the problem, and then there's a resolution. That's a classic formula for a story that people like to watch. So, but as far as the one-man band goes, it meant figuring out that there was a story, shooting the story, going over tons and tons of footage, whittling it down to 4 minutes, writing the story, editing the story. And that goes back to my days at Channel 8 when I first started, because we learned every aspect of television and video production. And I'm encouraging you all, as you are studying in high school, and if you go on to college or whatever you do after high school, try to learn as much as you can about all different aspects of production. And I know in a lot of your classes you're doing that. You're having to learn about all different aspects. You may have a strong preference for one, and certainly you can devote a lot of time to honing that craft. But if you know a little bit about a lot of ways to do all things that are involved, from figuring out the story to delivering it online or to a newsroom or wherever, or to a business, wherever you're delivering that video, you'll have a lot of opportunities. That's all I can say. Okay, so we're talking about preparation next, and meaning pre-production. Preparation and pre-production. I am very big on doing a lot of research. And when you go to do an interview, if you've done a lot of research on the person you're interviewing, it's going to show. If you have the time and you're doing a story where you're going to interview somebody, if you can talk to them on the phone ahead of time, I highly recommend it. Sometimes that's not possible, because a lot of times when you're talking to them on the phone, you're going to find something out that you didn't get through researching them online, and it might be the best part of your story. So do your research. Fact check, please. Don't believe everything that you read online. Let's do a good job about fact checking before we put stuff out into the world. I feel like as content creators, we have a real obligation to try to be truthful and to try to be accurate, because people believe what they see online. People believe what they see on TV. So it's really our obligation to do a good job and do an ethical job and an honest job. Prepare questions ahead of time. Interviewing is one of my favorite parts. I don't know, anybody else here like the interviewing? Anybody? Yeah, some hands are going up. I love doing the interviewing. To me, it comes very naturally. But still, to this day, even for my podcast, I write out a list of questions. If things are going well, I may not even need to refer to them, but there they are. Because it's a terrible feeling when you've set up an appointment with somebody, you've taken their valuable time, you conclude your interview, and you realize that one of the most important things you wanted to ask them about, you forgot to ask them about. So prepare your questions. if you can, scout your location. Do you guys ever do that? Do you go and check out where you're going to be shooting to see what the conditions are like? Again, you can't always do that. Sometimes we're just sent and you have to shoot and work with what you have. I was working as a freelancer for one of the networks, and there was an early morning show, and they wanted to do something about the Freedom Tower in the early morning. And they had us set up in Jersey City to shoot the Freedom Tower in the morning. And I got there, and I'm like, the sun's going to be coming up behind the tower. This is not going to go well. And it was horrific. And if anybody had put any time and thought into what the sun was going to be doing at 5 or 6 in the morning, they would have known that that was a bad idea. So scout your location if you can. And finally, under pre-production and preparation, a gear checklist. Does anybody here use a checklist when they're packing their gear? I can't see. Oh, I see 1 hand, 2 hands, 3 hands, 4 hands. Good. 35 years plus I've been doing this. I use a gear checklist before every single shoot. I just type it up or put it on your phone, whatever you got to do. How many people, or has anybody ever gotten to the shoot and you don't have an SD card, if that's what you're shooting on? I see hands going up. The hair is standing up on the back of my neck thinking about it. Oh, it's horrible. Batteries. Some people have gotten to shoots and they don't have their batteries. Not only are you wasting your own time, you're wasting the time of the person you've set the shoot up with, and it's just unprofessional. So a checklist can really help to avoid some of those problems. I shoot with several different cameras. This is one of the cameras that I use. And this is some of the gear that I typically go out with on a shoot. And my husband, bless his heart, one day as a gift to me, got me a cart. If you're going out with a bunch of gear and you can afford a cart, I highly recommend it. It doesn't help you. Again, I'm trying to talk about one-man band stuff. I shoot the majority of the stuff by myself. So if I can have a place that either is on the ground level or has an elevator, I'm really happy to have my cart. It doesn't help you when you're in an old building or when there's stairs, but carts are awesome. The light kit I have alone is very heavy. But you know what, before I go on to, we can stay on this slide, but I wanted to say this because this is so important, and I hope that the teachers aren't mad at me for saying this. I also sometimes just shoot stuff with my phone. Is that okay to say? It's okay to say. Okay. I'm all about learning your gear, learning about lighting. You know, I take 2 or 3 lights with me everywhere. I always use a tripod if I'm doing an interview, this kind of basic stuff. But if I'm somewhere and I decide this is a great story and all I have is my phone, I'll shoot with my phone. And I've done some cute little stories just shooting with my phone in 45 minutes. So don't worry if you don't have your own gear. Don't think that you can't create awesome stories, because you can create them with your phone. So again, about knowing video production and soup to nuts kind of one-man band stuff, another great opportunity I had was to go to South Australia and dive with the great white sharks. We were there for 10 days. This is a man named Stan Waterman. He just recently passed away, and he's a famous underwater filmmaker. And this is a man named Rodney Fox on the left, and he's known throughout the world in the shark community. Go ahead to the next one, please. Because he was attacked by a great white shark, and he nearly died when he was much, much younger. But he has since come to, he developed tremendous respect for the sharks, and he takes filmmakers and scientists out on boats, and we study and film the sharks. We went diving with sea lions on the way, which is so awesome. Unfortunately, though, wherever the sea lions are, there can also be white sharks, okay, because the sea lions are their prey. This is one of the scariest things I ever did, because it was kind of murky, and there was kelp, and I was like, I hope there aren't any sharks around. 2 months after I got back from my expedition, someone was killed doing this, because there are sharks among the sea lions sometimes. Go ahead. And there's fur seals in the foreground. Our ship we were on is in the background. Awesome experience. I'm buzzing through this fast because there's a reason I'm showing you the shark stuff. Go ahead. So here are the fur seals. They are born in this area off this island, and the blood and stuff that's in the water after they're born attracts the sharks to the area. And these are the cages we dove in. Now, what do you think that opening is for? Anybody? So you can get the camera out and not have any bars in front of your camera. So the night before we went on our first dive, they explained to us, the opening is big enough for some of the smaller sharks to get in. So you're going to need to really pay attention, and if you see a shark trying to get in your cage, you're going to need to push him out with your camera. And that did happen. And I'm sorry, I'm standing over here and I'm completely ignoring this side of the room. Go ahead. And here are the cages that we were diving in. We were floating at the surface, diving in these cages, and this is a shot underwater. It was just one of the most exhilarating things I've ever done in my life. And the reason I got, and here's a shark right near your cage going after some tuna. There's the sea lions again. And I don't know if you can kill the sound just on the video for just this short thing. Go ahead and play it. But the sound is not important. But my point here is, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see something like this, to see a shark that big just a few feet away. What I'm getting at is, you don't want to fly to South Australia, you don't want to get on the ship and realize you don't have your batteries or you don't have your SD card, because there's no way you can get help. Once in a lifetime opportunity. If you want to do this, whether it's for a hobby or whether you're doing it professionally, you want to be prepared. You want to have your batteries, you want to have your gear, you want to be ready. Okay, what is the time? 13 minutes, okay. Okay, then third out of the 4 Ps is professionalism, production, execution. Go ahead. Cameras and lights, placement. Okay, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of the technical side of shooting and lighting. There's obviously no time, and there are other presenters who will speak more about that. But as far as coming from the perspective of one-man band, because again, I've done full-length documentaries shooting 90% of the footage by myself, and when I do an interview, this won't be news to most of you, but I'll set up my camera on a tripod, and I have a chair here, and I'm gonna use you as the person I'm interviewing. You can just stay where you are. I'm interviewing, your name is? Mrs. Sandin. I'm interviewing Mrs. Sandin. And so I have my tripod here and my camera, and I'm sitting here, and I have my viewfinder open, my LCD viewfinder open so I can see it, and I'm always watching to make sure that she hasn't moved out of the shot and that it's recording. So I'll either sit next to it, because in the style that I'm shooting in, which is documentary and news feature story, the person is looking off camera at the person who's interviewing them. A lot of you will be shooting something completely different. But if you happen to be shooting an interview where the person should be looking off camera, set up the tripod, put it on the person, and then either crouch down so they're eye level with the lens, or take a seat. I usually don't sit because people are always moving, and I want to really be able to quickly adjust my shot, so I'm often just kind of crouching down. And luckily, people still do, because you want people to forget the camera's there, so people still will get more comfortable and forget the camera's there, but you always need to be wearing those 2 hats of both interviewing. That's the part that's not so great about one-man band, is as the producer interviewer, you really want to be concentrating on your questions and listening, but because you're shooting at the same time, you need to be paying attention. You don't want to get home and you weren't rolling. That's no good. Oh, that's horrible. Now, when I do a documentary, if I have the budget, I will happily hire a camera person and a sound person to assist me. But a lot of times, especially the last 3 documentaries I produced, I shot them all, each one took 2 years to shoot. So it's just not possible for me to pay somebody to do every single shoot. That's why I do a lot of stuff one-man band. Okay, external mics, tripod. Again, if I can hire a sound man to come with a boom or whatever, perfect. If I can't, I'm not above using a lavalier mic for an interview, and I don't care if you see it. You know, again, I hope the teachers aren't mad at me for saying that, but the viewers at home or wherever, online, they want to hear the sound, and they're not necessarily going to freak out if they see a mic. Sometimes you can hide it. Sometimes when you hide it, it rubs and it gets scratchy. But obviously what I'm saying is, I have to say, one thing I noticed about a lot of the films, again, I was blown away by some of the creativity and some of the stories were so much fun to watch. I want you to remember to pay as much attention to the sound as you do to the shooting. So the audio is 50% of production, so please make sure you pay attention to the sound. So if you're shooting one-man band and you have a lavalier, that works perfectly. I shoot on a tripod when I do my interviews. Not everybody does, but that's okay. Headphones, oh my God. Oh. After making sure you choose a great story to start with, because to me that's the most important thing. One of the other most important things is wear headphones. God, it sucks when you get back and there's no sound. And we would have these arguments with camera people I went out with at NJN. You know, they were too cool to wear headphones. It's okay, wear headphones, really. You don't, and even if you're recording sound, you know, oh, I can hear that it's, you know, it's recording sound. You wear your headphones and you hear when there's a terrible buzz in the audio. If you're not wearing your headphones when you're recording, sometimes you get back and there's a terrible buzz in the audio, and it's not fun. Check your recording before you leave the scene. You want to make sure you actually recorded something. And writing, I don't have time to go through a lot about writing, but writing is one of my other favorite parts of it. I will watch footage over and over and over and over again until the story reveals itself to me, or a piece of the story reveals itself to me, and that's what I start with writing about. How many people in here like the writing part of it? Okay, good. I'm so glad to see that. Good. Hone your craft in writing, and that you will go far in this business. To me, writing is it's torture, actually. It doesn't come, believe it or not, even after all this time, it actually doesn't come easily to me necessarily, but once it clicks, once you find that sparkle, once you figure out what part of the story you really want to focus on, it just makes the whole thing come together. And finally, editing. Again, you've studied this craft with your teachers. No time to get into the details of editing, but that's another favorite part for me, is the editing. Oh, I love using a little nat sound and mixing in the music and, you know, finding the perfect graphic to say what you want to say. I will go to great lengths to get the file footage that really makes the story sparkle, or get the photographs that I need. It can really add a lot to your videos. Again, the one-man band hat, as the producer, as the shooter, you're the writer, you're the editor, the whole responsibility falls on you. So if it's great, you get all the credit. If something is missing, unfortunately, it's your responsibility if you're doing soup to nuts. Very quickly, again, I've been to South Australia and Africa, as I mentioned, to do stories. I've been to Russia. Look at the story that happened right in our own backyard, okay? A huge, huge news story. I am sorry for anyone in the room whose family was impacted by this storm. My own family was impacted by this storm. An absolute nightmare. But as soon as I heard that there was a hurricane that was about to hit Seaside Heights, the day before it hit, what did I do? You go out and you start shooting. Go ahead. And I put together a 1-hour documentary called Heartbreak and Healing After Sandy, and I shot for 2 years. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? I thought I was going to shoot for 6 months and be done with it because we will all be fine again. Well, I'm sure you've all heard stories about what this period of time was like. It wasn't fine after 6 months. Some people, it wasn't fine after 10 years. But I shot for about 2 years, and I put together a documentary, and I'm probably more proud of this piece than anything I've ever done. And I've got about 2 more minutes, so I'm going to go on to the next thing. I'm not going to show the video about Superstorm Sandy because it's too long. I will show this really quick video that I did on the Brielle water tank. It's just footage. You don't have to worry about the sound. Because anybody who might have heard me say marketing videos earlier and might have thought that that would be boring, I did a story on the construction of a water tank, and it was one of the most exciting shoots I'd ever been on. It was terrifying. I did hire a drone operator to get these shots. I think they're gorgeous. But anybody in the room, and I can't even see your hands, so you don't have to hold them up at this point, but if anybody in the room is interested in drone footage, lots of opportunities for shooting commercially with drones. And finally, we're going to talk very quickly about perseverance, which to me is about follow-through. This is very important if you want to do well in this industry, is don't stop till you have what you need, okay? If you're the producer, because you're a one-man band, you want that file footage. You want those file photos that'll make your story special. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Now, this is something General George Patton said. That means don't make promises you can't keep. And if you make promises to somebody, follow through. It means if you tell somebody you're going to be there to interview them at 10 a.m., be there at 1:15. Okay? Next. Always aim for excellence and build trust. And if you do these things, you will build trust. And that's a big part of being in this industry is your reputation. And what, go ahead. I did a documentary called South Baseball, and I did a second documentary called South Football. And they were both shot here in Toms River. And I had the honor of having each one of those premiere at Ocean County College. And I'm saying this at this point not to brag, but to show how building trust matters. I've had 3 documentaries that were shown at Ocean County College, which was a big honor. But by the 3rd documentary, they didn't even look at the film before they said, yes, we'd love to premiere it. And that's because I've built trust with them over the years. So if you're professional, if you do what you say, you build trust, and it'll take you far. And finally, wrapping up here, again, as far as don't stop till you get what you need, the documentary I did on South Football involved a game in 1969, and I was determined to find the film footage from that game, and it took literally a year to locate that film footage, and we found it, go ahead, in the bottom of that trunk. And it made all the difference in my film. How can you do a documentary about a famous football game in 1969 without having footage of the game? I agreed to do the documentary before I had the footage, and then spent a year looking for it. That was took a little bit of a risk there, but it ended up paying off. So, go ahead. Well, we don't really have time to watch this clip. So that's the 4 Ps for success: passion, preparation, professionalism, perseverance. And what I want to close with is asking you to think about what story are you uniquely qualified to tell? Because there's a story in your life, whether it's something happening to you personally, whether it's happening to a family member, whether it's something going on in your school or in your community or in the world at large, that you're really feeling a desire and a need and even feel compelled to tell. That's the story that you want to work on. So my final comment is to step outside your comfort zone. That's where the magic happens. This is me in the shark cage in South Australia, time of my life. I want to thank you very much for your attention today. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. All right, guys, time to transition. If you're staying here, you can stay here. If you're moving on to the lecture hall for screenwriting, you can exit now. We're going to start very quickly. You only have a 5-minute transition. Thank you.
Baby, I'm just trying to play cool, but I just can't hide.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, a nice, enthusiastic front row. That's what I like to see. Fantastic to be here this morning. My name is Dan Zarrow. I am the chief meteorologist for New Jersey 101.5 and 13 other great radio stations here in the state of New Jersey. Before I launch into my talk, I'm a meteorologist. First, I have to tell you that today will be mostly cloudy, but mainly dry. We'll see a high temperature around 70 degrees, but rain comes back into the picture for tomorrow. Hey, all right, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, before I tell you what I'm going to talk about and the importance of the number 3, let me give you a little bit of my background so you can understand where I'm coming from. Again, I am a meteorologist, and it all started right here in beautiful Jackson, New Jersey. I went to Jackson Memorial High School, and at a very young age, I discovered that I loved the weather. It was actually in middle school that I started doing weather reports for all my friends. It was the coolest thing ever, and through high school, I did it as well. I decided to make it my career at a very young age. I went to Cornell University, and I started my career in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. I've worked in TV in Oklahoma, in Elmira, New York, and my crowning glory in the TV world at News 12, New Jersey. I was a meteorologist there for 2.5 years, and I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary at New Jersey 101.5, doing mainly radio, doing a lot of digital work as well. I do things that are outside the realm of weather. I do a lot on sales. I've got clients that I have to manage. There's a lot more to me than just giving you a weather forecast. And that comes back to the number 3. And the title of my talk today is The Rule of 3, a new way to think about content creation, job searching, and more. This is actually my 7th year presenting here at the High School Film Challenge and workshops. Thanks so much to Mr. Noble, Mr. Ferrone, for everybody having me back again. I'm kind of the catch-all guy. I like to talk about a lot of different things that are going to hit a lot of you high school students who may or may not necessarily be into the whole film production thing. Presumably, most, if not all of you, were involved in the Film Challenge a few weeks ago. I got to serve as a judge for the short films this year. All of them were phenomenal and beyond anything I could do in this day and age, so congratulations on that. I can't wait to see who actually walks away with the prize. I put in my votes, but it was a very hard decision. The last great short film that I did was actually in high school. My senior year, I did an independent study. I did a 22-minute film about why Jackson, New Jersey needed a second high school because of overcrowding and population explosion. And you're sitting in that high school that my video helped provide for. I don't know why they haven't named this place after me just yet. I guess I only had a little role in that whole project, but that's kind of where I stand in terms of film. So that's why I talk about content creation, because I do a lot of that on a daily basis, whether it's weather or something else. I talk about job searching because that's also something I have done a lot of in my life. I think I've sent out a total of, I think I'm up to 200 job applications over the course of my career. It's just the way our business goes. When you work in the media, you have to apply to a lot of different places and hope that something comes through. So I'm going to talk a lot about many different things, and hopefully you can walk away with a couple of tidbits, a couple different ways of thinking, different ways of organizing your work or your life, and it all surrounds the number 3 this year. And I'm going to tell you in a minute why I'm a little fascinated with the number 3, but I want to make it very clear that I'm not totally obsessed with the number 3. There's probably people in this world who are like, oh, 3 is my life, man. By the end of this presentation, you're going to be sick of the number 3 because I have lots of examples and things I'm going to show you, ways of thinking, but it really is, a magical number in the grand scheme of things. Can you think of things that come in trios and triplets in groups of 3? I thought of a couple, just a couple here. It's kind of weird to think about how many things are organized in groups of 3 in the world, from rock, paper, scissors, to the 3 little pigs, to saying Beetlejuice 3 times. 3 is kind of special in our world, in our language. It just feels right sometimes to do things in groups of 3. In fact, some people have termed the number 3 the transcendent function, or tertium quid, or the golden mean. I am not a philosopher. I don't pretend to be one. So we're not going to talk about this aspect of things in terms of why the number 3 is important. But, it is, and that's kind of where we're going from here. This guy right here, his name is Glenn Hurricane Schwartz. Anyone from South Jersey may know him as former meteorologist for NBC 10 out of Philadelphia. He was there for like 3 decades, retired 2 years ago. I had the honor of interning with Hurricane back in my college days. It was a phenomenal internship in television weather. I learned a lot of what I use every single day when I broadcast and forecast the weather. And one of the things that Glenn taught me was the power of 3 when you're talking about a weather forecast. When I create a weather forecast, when anyone does, you should be able to summarize that forecast, that weather prediction, in 3 bullet points. That's what he told me. You should have 3 weather headlines. What are the 3 big takeaways that we want our audience to take away at the end of it? And I just happened to find this screenshot of him, and look how his information is organized. He's got 3 sections on his little graphic behind it: where, when, and what. So I've used this a couple different ways throughout my career. Here's me back in my Oklahoma days, about 50 pounds heavier with no facial hair and glasses, but I promise that's me, using a 3 bullet point what to expect graphic for a particularly active weather day. So I use the number 3 when I'm planning my forecast, when I'm communicating that forecast all the time. This is kind of the spark for this talk. I'm like, you know what, I'm doing this 3 bullet point thing every day. How can I relate that to high school students who are interested perhaps in film or content creation or just organizing their life a little bit better? So what we're going to do today, we've talked about the amazing utility of the rule of 3. I have a couple more generic examples to give you. And then we'll dig into the content creation side, and we'll wrap things up with some career skills that you can hopefully take to the bank. Some of you are probably seniors getting ready to move on to the real world or to college next year. Some of you are freshmen just getting started in this whole high school thing. You've got a few years before you have to think about this. Again, if you can walk away with 1 or 2 nuggets, 1 or 2 tidbits from my talk today, I think it was successful. All right, let's start with this naturals 3s, some more trios. And just to give you an example of what we're talking about here and to set the template. So, okay, 3 stages of life, right? We've got adolescence, middle age, and your golden years. You can kind of break up your entire life into 3 almost equal segments, and that's how you live for 80, 90, 100 years, whatever it may be. Very similar, we have the stages of Taylor Swift. We go from hookup to break up to writing a hit song, right? 3. So I don't even know where this came from. I felt I needed a touch of humor at this point in the presentation, so here you go, and it just really fit. So the 3 stages of life, the 3 stages of Taylor Swift. Something a little more serious, how about survival? The rule of 3s in survival, anybody ever heard of that? So you can go 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. If you're stuck in the wilderness or on a life raft in the middle of the ocean, you can theoretically survive for about that amount of time. There's actually 2 more elements to this that kind of completes the set. It's 3 hours without shelter. Think of if you're out in the middle of a blizzard, 3 hours, and then you're going to have some real problems. And then also 3 months without hope in terms of depression and things like that. So rule of 3 in survival. Here's a relaxation technique you can try using our rule of 3. If you just sit down, think of yourself like in the middle of the woods somewhere nice and peaceful, and just concentrate on 3 things you can see, 3 things you can hear, and then strategically move 3 body parts. Maybe your big toe, wiggle your spleen, and, blink your eyes. I don't know. I'm not big into the yoga thing, but apparently this is a thing, a way to relax. I guess I'm not great with relaxation. I've got 4 kids at home, so I don't do much of that relaxing thing. But another rule of 3 I found. Hey, how about the high school film challenge, huh? Rule of 3, absolutely in play, right? You had your prompt, last chance, your character name, TJ, and a prop, the coin. How long did your short film have to be? 3 minutes, yeah. So we're going to come back to this thought later, but think about how you might organize that 3-minute film. Do you break it into thirds? Think about how you organized your week that you had to film it. Do you break it into thirds, planning, production, and post-production? A lot of avenues here to think about the number 3. Again, it just works so well in life. It's kind of a starting point for organizing ourselves. Let's dig into content creation, and we're going to talk about a whole variety of ways we can think about this and ways the number 3 can help you. And we start with the 5-paragraph model essay. Now, some schools don't teach the 5-paragraph model essay. My son's school does something completely different now. But, you know, a generic school essay generally has 5 paragraphs, right? You have your introduction, and then you have 3 body paragraphs, and then you have your conclusion, right? The 3 parts of any good paper, any good essay are going to have these 3 elements. And when we think about any kind of content, creating something of any length that someone else is going to consume, it is probably going to have these 3 elements: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So let's apply that to storytelling, right? If we're telling a story, whether it's a movie, whether it's a documentary like Sandy was just talking about here, or whether it's a 3-minute short film, whether it's a paper or an article, you are probably going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, our 3 parts. And I am going to steal an analogy that I saw Mr. David Landau. He's our other speaker down in the lecture hall. Maybe you saw him in the first part. He gave this example at this seminar a few years ago, and I have to steal it because it is perfect. The Wizard of Oz, classic cinema. Hopefully everybody has seen it at some point, right? From 1939. The movie is 1 hour and 43 minutes long. What happens if we break that movie into thirds? Can you guess? Think about the movie. What do you think happens at exactly 1/3 of the way, 34 minutes or so into the movie? What's happening? We are transitioning from the beginning to the middle. 34 minutes in, they are starting to sing "Follow the Yellow Brick Road." They have set up the movie in exactly the first third of the film, and now they're heading into their journey down the yellow brick road. How about the last third? Where do you think that ends up? So now we're like a little more than 1 hour into the film. They're going in to meet the wizard. We're heading into that last third of the film. It's almost perfect. They're going in, and we find out how they have to resolve this story. The journey down the yellow brick road is over, and they're heading into the conclusion. It's almost a perfect example of a beginning, a middle, and an end to the story, and that's why it feels so complete, because we have all 3 of those elements, and they're almost exactly equidistant in time. So thank you to David for mentioning that a few years ago. I think it works perfect in this context. All right, writing an article. And I do a lot of this. I have my weather blog on our website, on our app. In a good year, I will get about 9 million page views on my content, so I like to think I'm a little successful in what I write. I write about 500 articles a year. Half of those are weather-related. The other half are something else. And sometimes when you're getting ready to write something, whether it's an article or anything, you can suffer from 2 problems. You either get writer's block, where you have no idea where to start, or you're going to just download so much information that your article turns into 2,000 or 2,500 words. Just so you're in the right ballpark, 500 to 1,000 words is where I like to end up. A 2,500-word article is good in some instances where it's something really comprehensive, but it can be really hard for your average person to really digest and understand all that. So we can, of course, implement our power of 3, the rule of 3, come up with 3 points as your starting point. Literally write them down. When I start writing an article, whether it's my daily weather forecast or anything else, I open up a Google Doc, I start with my 3 big headers, and I start from there. And it's just my starting point for when I'm stuck, which is pretty much on a daily basis, of how to organize my content, my article that I'm writing. Presentation, same thing. You saw my presentation today is kind of broken up into 3 parts: the introduction, content creation, and job searching. If you're stuck again, you might want to first come up with the headline of your talk, and this is a graphic organizer that I found that kind of shows how this would work. Come up with 3 key messages and then 3 points for each message. Again, using that rule of 3. Is it a hard, fast rule? Absolutely not, but it gives you a starting point in creating what you have to create. rather than just a blank slate. Let's talk about speeches. This, that, and the other thing. President Barack Obama was a master at the rule of three. He was a great orator. And in his acceptance speech after the New Hampshire primary in January 2008, his speech was only a few minutes long. He had 12 instances of triples. You know, this, and this. Democrats, Republicans, and independents. From Iowa to New Hampshire to South Carolina. We need to take care of nuclear weapons and climate change and terrorism. It was just his use, whoever his speechwriter was, of course, was using this device to its full effect 12 times in that speech, and using these triplets can help you in your writing too. It just feels natural. We love the number 3. Okay, making a radio commercial. This is something that I do all the time. The 3 parts of a standard 30 or 60-second commercial, or any kind of persuasion: first you need a hook, then you need to show the value, and then you need a call to action. So think about this. I've got a client coming onto my radio station. They want me to write and record a commercial. We call it a spot in the industry, a 60-second commercial for their business. So I sit down, again, blank slate in front of me, and these are the 3 things that I want to incorporate. I need something to catch my listeners' attention. I need to actually put forth the advertiser's message, what they do, and then finish with a call to action. I want them to actually buy this service or go on a website, or however we're tracking metrics. That's important too. And I want to give you an example of a commercial that that just finished running in April of 2024. My oldest client is Wills Laser Vision out of Princeton. They do LASIK. They do laser eye correction. And the way this works in the radio industry is when you get a client and you personally endorse them, they either pay you for that privilege or they get you free product. I got free LASIK because I agreed to talk about these guys on the radio. Pretty good deal. By the way, LASIK is awesome. I'm going on 9 years and I'm still seeing better than 20/20 after wearing glasses for so long. So I want to read you, it's a 60-second commercial, but it incorporates these 3 pieces. First, I'm going to hook you in with something attention-grabbing, some story, some element. Then we're going to talk about the value of this particular company, and then the call to action. So here you go, a live performance of a Dan Zarrow commercial. Hey, it's Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. You know, the other day, my wife Amy and I were looking through some old photos with the kids. Pictures from the before times when we both wore glasses, and our kids hardly recognized us. We say it all the time, having our LASIK procedures done at Wills Laser Vision at Princeton was one of the best decisions we've ever made. Not only because of how we look, but also because our vision is still perfect without staring through dirty, scratched up, fogged up lenses. Wills Laser Vision at Princeton is the same doctors you know and trust from the Princeton Eye Group. Dr. Michael Wong, Dr. Reynolds, Dr. Mijak, Dr. Liu, Dr. Epstein, Dr. Jatico, and Dr. Solarte. Their LASIK procedure literally takes just a few minutes. It's painless, it's accurate, and it's blade-free. State-of-the-art technology and skilled hands guiding you to crystal clear vision. Start your LASIK journey today by scheduling a complimentary consultation with Wills Laser Vision at Princeton. Call 609-924-9200 or visit willslaservision.com. Thank you. Now, instead of clapping, if you all could go on their website and schedule LASIK and tell them you heard about it from me, that would be phenomenal, because, you know, we like to throw business their way. That's my job, is to promote their business and persuade people. And these are the 3 steps. We've got the hook, the value, the call to action. We're going to see these 3 steps again in a little while, so just kind of file that in the back of your brain for now. Photography. Photography has a lot of 3s when it comes down to it. The one that I've pulled here specifically is content, concept, and composition, the 3 C's of taking a good photo: what you're shooting, why you're shooting it, and how's it going to look. There's also the exposure triangle that you might be familiar with: shutter speed, ISO, and aperture, the 3 things that kind of dictate how a shot looks. And there's also the rule of thirds, which is shown on the right side here, where you take your image, you take your shot, and you basically turn it into a tic-tac-toe board. And the goal here is to put your action on one of the lines, and specifically one of the intersection. It makes for a more interesting photo, rather than just taking photos of everything front and center, especially if you're looking for a more artsy look, something a little more dramatic, you line it up with your rule of thirds, and it's more interesting of a photo. So content creation lends very well to photography when you're planning out these things, what you're going to take a picture of or even take a video of. Design, which is not necessarily my strong suit, but again, in doing the research for this talk and thinking about it a little bit, I found a couple different resources where when you think about graphic design, there's a lot of threes in play here. So here's 3 examples of a business card. Each one has slight differences in terms of the placement, the font size, and you're looking for a maximum of 3 elements, a maximum of 3 fonts, and a maximum of 3 colors. I think this is kind of a loose guideline, and you have to eyeball these kinds of things because there's a lot of variation. There's a lot of flexibility depending on what you're trying to create. In this case, I think the conclusion was the top business card is the best because you have 1, 2, 3 specific elements. You have 1, 2, 3 specific fonts, and you actually have 2 colors, the black text and then the red plus that gives it a little bit of a pop. The other ones, things spread apart a little bit more. It just gets a little harder on the eyes. Again, design is not necessarily my strong suit, but I think this is interesting to think about as another creative outlet and creative use of our rule of 3. So that's content creation. Let's move on to some career skills, some things you can take to the bank. And as I said, I have applied for tons of jobs at all stages of my career, both early when I'm looking for that first job and recently. I'm a big believer that you should always be looking to see what's out there, and it's not just for me. I'm also looking for colleagues and mentorees. I've got people that are reaching out, hey, if you hear something, let me know. So I'm always kind of looking at the market and trying to coach people. So that's where I come from in terms of the advice that I'm going to give you. If you sat in my talk last year, some of the advice I'm going to give you here is pretty familiar, so you feel free to take a nap if you were here last year, because you already memorized it, obviously. Let's start with the resume. Okay? Critical piece to getting a job, critical piece to getting into college too, by the way. And I am going to agree strongly, if you were in Sandy's talk in here in the first session, where she told you that the experience that you get is far more important than your education. And I absolutely agree with that. The 3 elements of your resume, experience first, then education, then the other stuff. I always thought this was ludicrous, that you put your experience ahead of your education. And to an extent, this depends on your field. If you're going into academia, if you have a PhD, for instance, your education is pretty important. So that's going to take paramount importance and probably be at the top of your resume. But for something that's practical, for something in the creative arts realm, even meteorologist, what you've done, what you've accomplished, where you've been is far more important than your education. This is actually the front page of one version of my website. My education is in the left-hand bar there, kind of hidden in the middle. That's how, not unimportant, but how less important it is than the experience, which is in the big white section there. In terms of other stuff, I think it's important when you have a resume to show a little bit of personality, to not just include education and experience, but I have professional affiliations, memberships that I'm involved in, I have volunteer experience. Usually I'll include a couple other things, like I enjoy trips to Disney World with my family, going to see Broadway musicals, and wine. Just to give a potential hiree, a potential interviewer, some little tidbit, and it actually worked. A couple years ago, I was interviewing for a position with someone who was very involved in the Cub Scouts. I'm a Cub Scout leader for my son's pack, and we had a grand conversation about how great scouting is. It was a nice in and a nice connection that I had. So don't be afraid of showing a little bit of personality. You don't want to go crazy. You don't want to be using like rainbow paper for your resume, unless it's appropriate for some reason. As a meteorologist, I have used cloud stationery for my resume. I'm not proud of it, but it happened. We went there. You still want it to be professional, both in look and in content, but don't be afraid of including some other stuff on there, a little tidbit that an interviewer might glean onto. Couple more resume tips. This is another version of my resume that I use for specific purposes. And you want to keep it simple. Look how much white space there is. The sentences are short and easy to read. You don't want it to be too dense and too complicated that someone's just going to put you in the no pile immediately. Unfortunately, it does happen. You want to ditch the objective statement. I think this is a general trend. When resumes are taught, sometimes they tell you at the very top, you need to have a sentence to say what you're looking for. I'm looking for a role in broadcast meteorology so I can lend my skills in TV and forecasting to a great organization. It's a waste of space. They know why you're applying for the job, because you want that job. That objective statement, it might fit a little bit better in a cover letter, perhaps, but be strategic. With every section of your resume, you are selling yourself, right? Whatever goes at the top of your resume, that's your hook. You want somebody to keep on reading. I use a section I call Summary of Qualifications, just a couple quick bullet points about what I'm good at. These are both hard skills in terms of forecasting and doing the weather, but also soft skills in terms of being passionate and having time management. You know, 4 quick lines at the top, that's the way I start mine. There are other options. Don't think you're locked into a specific resume format. Your resume is yours, and you can do whatever you want with it. The last thing I'll mention is to be mindful of keywords. This is why I have a second version of my resume that I actually use more often for applications. When you submit a job application, or probably a college application these days, you submit it online, it gets uploaded, and that system is going to pore over your resume, and it's going to give you a score. It's going to look at the job description, and it is going to decide, is your resume a good fit for this job? It's the way of the world. Some companies, some hiring managers will take that score very seriously. Some won't look at it at all. But you should be mindful that your resume hits some important points from the job description. I'm not saying you need to have a completely different resume for every job you apply to, but you might want to tweak some things. You might want to have a section where it talks about what kind of software you're skilled at, whether it be Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro, whether it's, you know, are you good at web design? Can you code in Python or C? Are you adept in app development? A section where you can kind of change things up, not to lie, but to better suit a job that you're applying for and that you're very interested in. Keywords are really important in this day and age, and you know, with the growth of AI, it's not that hard to do. I mean, you could plug a job description and a resume into ChatGPT and say, what are some things I can change? What are some keywords I could add? And get some suggestions. I mean, ChatGPT will spit out a whole cover letter for you if you want. I think there's some ethical issues with just copying and pasting what a computer says, but that can be a very helpful tool as, again, you're staring at a blank page. What do I do? All right, 3 goals of a cover letter. Do you need a cover letter, first of all? And the answer is definitely maybe. This is going to vary greatly depending on the application. Some job descriptions will tell you, yes, you absolutely need a cover letter and it needs to include this. And when that's the case, then absolutely you need one. I kind of go back and forth on it. Sometimes I'll write one, sometimes I won't. If you do write one, there's 3 goals that you should consider. Number 1, it's kind of that what I mentioned with the personality part of your resume. You want to establish a connection. Why in the world are you applying to this company, to this job? You should make it clear that it's not just because it's available, but because you have some special skills to offer and it would be a perfect fit. The cover letter is your opportunity to go beyond the resume, to talk about those soft skills that may not have a spot for a bullet point on your actual resume, or to elaborate on your most important experiences and how, you know, this project that you recently did applies to the position that you're applying for. And then also show you can write clearly and concisely. And this is extremely important if you're applying for a job that has writing in it. If you're applying for some sort of content creation writing job, if you have spelling errors, typos, grammatical errors in your cover letter, you're going in the trash can. It's not your best look, and it's not going to be in the company's best interest to look at you any further. So, cover letter, hit or miss. Some jobs that you may apply for also require a portfolio or demo reel. In my case, broadcast meteorologist, either TV or radio, the people who are hiring those positions want to see a sample of what I can do. And the bottom here is actually a screenshot of one of my past demo reels. Back in college, this was the days of VHS demo reels, where I had to edit it from VCR to VCR and piece it. I'm not that old, but that's just the way of the world a couple of years ago. And then you'd have to pay tons of money to send off the actual tape. Luckily, it's all online and digital now. When you're putting together any kind of portfolio, any showcase of your work, you need to start with the best stuff. Something that's really going to impress. You want to start with a bang. In my case, I start with severe thunderstorm coverage because that's my specialty. It's dramatic, it's something interesting, and I'll show a couple rapid-fire shots of that before we get into the meat of it. You know, this is what I can really do. This is me doing the weather. This is a full compilation of your films. Maybe you include an entire short film that you did. Maybe you include, you know, that documentary. If it's an art portfolio, maybe several similar things that go along the category that you like to draw or work in. And then I like to end with something special. In my case, this is something like a special report that I did on a certain storm, or maybe another severe weather clip, depending on the job that I'm applying to. The way you format this is very important, and that relates to the top graph right here. Along the bottom axis, this is the time in the video. So we start at the beginning of the video, and we start at the end of the video. And this is some average of YouTube videos. I don't have the source on this, but of which videos and what each line represents. But this is the beginning, the middle, and end of videos. And this is how much of the audience is still watching. So look what happens after the first 30 seconds. We've lost half our audience in many cases. They're just done watching. And that's the case with job descriptions, job applications. You know, these hiring managers, they may have, in some cases, hundreds of these things to go through. Unfortunately, they can only afford 30 seconds on each one to decide if they go deeper. And then things kind of level off until the very end, and usually you'll have credits or something at the end when people stop watching. That's that last little dip in the curve. But that first 30 seconds, that first page, that first document, that is the most important. You need to put your best foot forward, start with a bang, start with your absolute best stuff. All right, let's say you made it to the interview stage. Congratulations. You are probably nervous as hell. Heck, sorry, high school students. Interviewing can be very intimidating. It can even be downright scary. I remember my first in-person interview for a professional meteorology job. It was in Salisbury, Maryland, for a TV station there. It took me 7 hours to drive there from college in the pouring rain all morning long. And then I got there and I did the interview, and it went fine. The chief meteorologist really liked me. He showed me some stuff. And then I got to the news director, and he just had a sour face the whole time. And the end of that first interview, something I will never forget, the last question that he asked, I did not have an answer for it, and that's when I lost that job. He asked me what I do besides the weather. What do I do for fun besides being a meteorologist? And I froze, and I said, I don't know. But here's where I'm coming from. I was a college senior at the time, so all I did was work, schoolwork and extracurriculars. I didn't have hobbies at the time. I didn't know what my life would be like after I graduated a couple weeks after that. I should have given a better answer. I wasn't expecting that question, but that's like my biggest interview fail of all time, is I wasn't quite adequately prepared for that. So let me leave you with that tip, is that you should prepare an answer to that question in case somebody asks you, what do you like to do for fun? What do you do outside of work? It's a good idea to have like 3 bullet points maybe to throw in as an answer to that question. Some other interview things. there's kind of 3 parts to the interview, which comes back to the rule of 3 here. The first section is talking about who are you? You know, the person will have your resume and your application. Hopefully, the interviewer has read it ahead of time, but the beginning of the interview is really just a getting to know you kind of thing. We'll come back to that in a second. And then they're going to ask you some pointed questions. This is the meat of the interview, right? Are you the right fit for the position? Do you have the skills? Do you have the experience? Will you fit right with the company culture? The third part of the interview is just as important, especially if this is a face-to-face interaction where they brought you in to their space and they are clearly interested in you. You need to grill them a little bit and make sure the company or the school is a right fit for you. You need, you know, at the end of every interview, they'll probably throw out, is there anything you want to ask of me? And I would hope that you have some questions. I would hope you have some smart questions after you've done some research on this company. You know, some valid questions to ask would be, what are your benefits like? You know, going beyond the salary, things like paid time off and health insurance to grown-ups in the real world, that's very important. You might ask things about the company culture. What are the work hours like? What's the schedule? Are there work from home opportunities, or can it be hybrid? What would my office look like? Et cetera, et cetera. You know, what's the travel compensation? There's a lot of things that fit in there. You have to prepare for it because that's going to come up in every interview. The hardest question that you get in every interview might be the first one, which is the whole, tell me a little bit about yourself. How would you answer that question right now? If you were sitting in a job interview, your dream job, this guy is sitting across from you, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, I'm a senior in high school, and I like film, and that's about it, I guess. This is the easiest thing to prepare before your interview, and the 3 elements you need to remember when answering tell me about yourself. Talk about who you are. You don't have to say your name. They know that already. What you can do, so focus on what you can do for their company, for their position, whatever, and then a little bit about why you're here. That's the perfect crafted answer to this question. And I shouldn't even call it that because, you know, there's no perfect answer here. You want to keep it short, you want to keep it deliberate and pointed, and you want to have it prepared. That's really the important part because every single interview is going to start with some variation of, tell me a little bit about yourself. You should have that ready to go. That's similar to an elevator pitch. Have you heard of an elevator pitch? The theory behind this is, okay, let's say you're on the 20th floor of the building and the CEO of the company walks into the elevator and you've got a minute before that elevator reaches the ground floor where you have his undivided attention to pitch something. Maybe it's an idea, an innovation, a product. Maybe it's to pitch yourself as a potential employee or maybe deserving of a promotion or a raise. Obviously, the exact situation there where you're in an elevator isn't going to happen, but sometimes you have 30 seconds to impress somebody. How do you do that? Well, you start with a hook, and then you give some value, and then you end with a call to action. Sound familiar? That was the radio commercial that we did earlier. This whole idea of persuasion is very important, not just in creating content, but in living your life. We're persuading people to have a certain opinion, to take certain action all the time. So, you know, if you're selling a product, let's say you have a short film that you're trying to shop out there, you want to think of the best way to hook somebody in, the value that you can provide, and the call to action. Maybe that call to action is, can we set up a meeting? Can I send you a copy? Can I send you the script? Can we talk further, set up a time? Can I get your email address? 3 elements, magic of number 3, to keep in mind when you have that opportunity. When opportunity knocks, you need to be ready. Hook, value, call to action. This is my least favorite one of the entire presentation, but it's important for you to know that this stupid thing exists. The compliment sandwich. Anyone heard of the compliment sandwich? My former boss was a huge fan of the compliment sandwich. She was fired in December. So no more compliment sandwiches for me. I guess it's a way of coaching employees, and there's a way it can be done right. The way this works is, let's pretend that that you were naughty at work. You did something bad, you underperformed, something needs correction. So you get called into their manager's office and they offer you the compliment sandwich. They start with something good. You've been working so hard lately, you did great on this project, you should be very proud of yourself. However, you stick the bad thing in the middle, but hey, keep working hard because I look forward to your work on this coming up. The compliment sandwich. It's evil, but I guess it works sometimes. It's a rule of 3, right? It's 3 steps to it. I mention this because it's really helpful to know when you're getting compliment sandwiched. I use that as a verb because you know how to react to it, I guess, and you just kind of take the sandwich and eat it and walk away and say, okay. It's just a very mild way of being counseled or corrected on something that needs fixing. At least you get to talk about the bread, which is the good stuff. Okay, now we're going to kind of transition. We're not talking about the realm of job searching anymore. Let's talk about your life. And I'm sure you guys are probably very busy people, right? High school can be a very busy time between what you're learning in school and homework, extracurricular activities, hopefully some sort of social life. Those of you who are old enough probably are getting into having a job, which is a whole nother responsibility. So you don't have much time for other stuff. Your life is pretty regimented right now, or at least during the school day it's regimented. Hopefully you have some goals looking forward. And when you think about goals, of course, our rule of 3 here, short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. Short-term goals could be, what do you want to accomplish today? I'll show you an example of that in a second. Medium range could be, what do you want to do by the end of this week or the end of this month? And a long-term goal is going to be looking way down into the distance. You know, what do you want to do for college? What do you want to do for a job? Where do you want to be at age 30? Some people plan these things out. You need to be ready with contingencies and backup plans for when those plans and those goals fall through. But it's good to have goals. It's good to sit down and specifically set them. You know, you could set, hey, let's say 3 things in each of these categories that you want to accomplish, and it's going to make you a more organized person. This is the kind of advice that people pay thousands of dollars for a career coach to help them with. I'm giving it to you for free. You know, being deliberate, being strategic, planning out your life is a really good thing, even at your age. Let's talk about daily goal setting. When I wake up in the morning, I have almost an hour commute on my ride to work. I live up in Union County. Our studios are down by Trenton. Me and Route 1, we are very well acquainted in the early morning hours. I go to work at 2 in the morning, by the way, so nice straight shot. I've got a nice time to think. And one of the things I do on my daily commute is set my daily goals. And how many goals do I set? 3, of course. So my goals for today. First, I'm going to kick butt, giving my high school film challenge workshop. Hey, I can almost check that one off. We got some approval. Not on the list, but after this, I'm looking forward to some pizza. Who's excited for pizza? Yeah. My number 2 on the list here is catching up with old friends and family. You know, I've been doing this for a couple of years. I'm back in my hometown here, so I love seeing the teachers and students. I got to go talk to Mr. Katona, the band director. We like talking about Disney World, among other things. So that's kind of a nice element of my day, too. And then the third thing I hope to accomplish tonight, I'm making spaghetti for the kids and then playing Roblox with them, too. You know, I figured that would resonate well. Not something that I often have time for, but it is important as you're setting, you know, I'm so diehard about all these professional things, right? About how to get a job, how to teach a job, but the personal aspect of your life is really important too. I've got 4 boys at home, 3 of whom play Roblox on a regular basis. They are so excited that Daddy's going to play with them tonight. I can't wait to see what kind of stupid stuff they're going to make me do on the iPad tonight. It's going to be amazing, but great end to the week coming up. So there's my daily plan. Your daily plan, I mean, here in high school, you may think about, okay, I've got this project coming up that I want to work on. I want to do really well in this activity. I've got a sporting event today. That's where my focus is going to be. I want to eat a really healthy breakfast or a really big dinner. Maybe that's your plan. When you wake up in the morning, you have a little bit of downtime, think about the 3 things you want to accomplish. Again, this is advice that professionals take, like high-level execs. This is how they plan your day. You're getting it for free, nice and easy. All right, I always like to end my talks by talking about careers in broadcast media. And there's a very important reason for that. The FCC requires me to talk about careers in broadcast media so my station can get credit for my talk today. So here's the thing about careers in broadcast media. They're awesome. Very few of you are probably considering a job in radio or television specifically, okay? The world is online these days, right? But it is worth noting that radio stations and TV stations are still thriving. There are still a place for them in our world. I mean, my company, Townscore Media, owns, I think, 280-something radio stations in the country, third biggest radio group in America, and we've transitioned our revenue from solely radio to more on the digital side. So it's not just a TV station or a radio station, there's this digital enterprise too. So it could be a great way for you to get experience, whether that's in on-air, journalism, or opinionated content, whether it's editing, video or audio, whether it's writing, whether it's management. There's a lot to offer, truly, in broadcast media. I've made a great career out of it. I still enjoy what I do every day. When there's a big storm and I have to sleep on the floor of the radio station, not so much. But, okay, maybe it's a consideration for you, maybe not. I can check the box on my FCC report, and we've talked about careers in broadcast media, so thank you for sitting through that. You guys are great. You guys really just want pizza, though, don't you? Let's wrap things up here. Just to recap what we've talked about, right? The conclusion, 3 is a magic number. I promise I'm not obsessed with it, but hopefully I've made the case that it can fit into a lot of areas of your life. And as long as you're trying to stay organized, and as long as you're being strategic, both in professional and personal life, I think you're gonna find some ways to use that triplet power, the number 3, to help you through it. So again, hopefully I've given you some helpful tidbits today. I was gonna play a video of the count singing about the number 3, but I figured that was a little much. So I decided to leave it out because then I'd have to deal with audio and everything else. But anyway, there you go. My email address is at the bottom. Also, the URL there, danzero.com/3, written out, that'll get you to a copy of this presentation in case you wanted to look at notes, etc. Thank you so much, guys. Pizza's in the auxiliary gym. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you.